All right, let's talk about one of the biggest challenges in software, actually getting your code out into the world. Today, we're going to tackle the deployment of a modern web app, and we're not going to do it the old-fashioned, manual, hoping and praying way. Nope. We're going to turn that whole complex process into a simple, repeatable, automated recipe, all thanks to a really powerful tool called Ansible.
But seriously, just think about what's involved for a second. You have to spin up a server, right? Then you install all this different software. You've got to configure databases, set up web servers, pull your code from somewhere, and then you have to make sure every single piece is talking to every other piece perfectly. One little typo, one misstep, and the whole thing just crumbles. It's a process that is absolutely screaming to be automated.
So here's our game plan. We're going to build this automated recipe together, step by step. First, we'll map out the whole deployment blueprint. Then, we'll get the server's foundation ready. After that, we build our Python application, use some magic to create our configurations on the fly, and for the grand finale, we launch everything and bring our website to life. Every great recipe, whether it's for a cake or for code, starts with a clear list of instructions. In the world of Ansible, we call this recipe a playbook. So our very first step is to take a look at the playbook and see exactly what we're about to cook up. This right here is our high-level game plan. This is the heart of our Ansible playbook, and it just makes sense, right? It's a logical flow that takes us from a completely bare server to a fully functional web app. We're going to install our tools, grab the code, build the environment, set up our database, write the config files, and then we hit the big green Go button. Now, a recipe isn't all that useful if you can't tweak the ingredients, right? You might want to deploy to a test server one day and a production server the next. In Ansible, our ingredients are called variables, and they're what let us customize our deployment for all these different situations without ever having to change the core steps of the recipe itself. And just look at how easy this is to read. We're not looking at some kind of cryptic code. We've got a project name, a URL for where our code lives, the actual public address for our website. It's all defined right here in plain English. This is what makes our automated recipe so incredibly flexible and, honestly, just easy to understand. Of course, every recipe has some secret ingredients. And in our case, these are the things that really need to be kept secret. We're talking database passwords, API keys, the sensitive stuff. You definitely can't just write those into your main recipe for the whole world to see. So, how do we handle that? This is such a simple and elegant solution. It's a super common best practice. Over on the left, you see this template file, secrets.yml example. It's got dummy values, and it's totally safe to share or commit to your public code repository. Then on the right, that's your actual secrets file. You create it from the template, you put in your real passwords, and you make sure it is never shared. It's a simple but absolutely critical security pattern. All right, our recipe is all laid out. Now it's time to actually start cooking. And the first thing you do in any kitchen is prep your space. So for us, that means getting our server ready. We're basically preheating the oven and getting all the foundational pieces in place. And Ansible just makes this part a breeze. We use its built-in apt module to install all the system software we need, like our web server and our database. Then we use the file module to create the perfect folder structure for our project. And finally, the Git module just reaches out to our repository and pulls down the latest version of our app's code. 3 simple tasks, and just like that, our server is prepped and ready to go. Okay, the oven is preheating, our kitchen is prepped. Now it's time to start mixing our core ingredients together. This is the phase where we assemble the actual software components of our application. Now, before we install a single thing, we're going to follow a super important best practice, creating a Python virtual environment. Imagine trying to bake a chocolate cake and a vanilla cake in the same bowl at the same time. It would be a total mess. Well, a virtual environment gives our project its own clean, isolated bowl. That way, its specific software requirements don't clash with anything else on the server. And Ansible just handles this whole stack without breaking a sweat. It creates that virtual environment for us. Then, it uses the pip module to read our requirements.txt file and install the exact Python packages our app needs. At the same time, it uses dedicated Postgres modules to create a secure database user and a brand new database, all ready and waiting for our application. Okay, this is where the real magic of automation starts to shine. Our app needs configuration files, but they need to be tailored for this specific deployment. So instead of us manually editing text files, we're going to generate them perfectly on the fly using one of Ansible's coolest features, templates. Now, don't let the syntax here scare you. This is just a little bit of logic from something called a Jinja 2 template. All it's saying is, hey, for every single domain name you find in our list of variables, just print it out here inside some quotes. It's a super simple way to dynamically build a list of all the host names our web app is allowed to serve.
And here it is, the big payoff. Ansible takes that template logic on the left, it grabs our variables, mashes them together, and produces the perfectly formatted final configuration file you see on the right. This is huge. It means we can deploy to a staging server or a production server just by changing a single variable, and our configs will be generated perfectly every single time. Okay, let's pause for a second on a really key concept, idempotence. I know, it's a fancy word, but the idea behind it is simple and incredibly powerful. It just means that running our deployment playbook over and over again won't break anything. If a package is already installed, Ansible is smart enough to just skip it. If a file is already correct, it won't touch it. This is what makes our automation safe, predictable, and totally stress-free. We've done it. We've prepped the server, we've built the application, we've created the configs. All of our components are ready to go. So now it's time for the final, most exciting step, bringing it all together and serving our live application to the world. So think about this. What happens when we update a configuration file? Well, the service that's using it needs to be restarted so it can pick up those changes. Ansible has this really elegant way of handling it. When a task changes a file, like our Nginx config here, it can notify something called a handler. Just think of it like raising a little flag that says, hey, something important changed over here. And that little flag, that notification, then triggers a specific action, our handler. In this case, it triggers the restart Nginx handler. Now, the really clever part is that these handlers only run once at the very end of the whole playbook and only if they've been notified. This is so efficient, it stops services from restarting over and over again during a single deployment. So our final setup is really a team of services all working together. We've got Junicorn, which actually runs our Python code. We have Supervisor, which is like a manager that makes sure Junicorn is always running. Nginx is the face of the operation. It sits out front and handles all the public web traffic. And then there's Cron, which handles our scheduled tasks. Ansible sets up and manages this whole team for us. And just like that, with a single command, we have gone from a bunch of code in a repository to a fully deployed, live and running web application. This URL right here, that's the result of our entire automated recipe, executed perfectly from start to finish. It's pretty amazing. So at the end of the day, what did we actually gain here? Well, we've massively cut down the time we spend on deployments. We've guaranteed consistency, completely getting rid of those, well, it worked on my machine type of errors. And we've made the entire process scalable. Need to deploy 10 more of these servers? Just run the exact same recipe. The benefits are just huge. So we took this complex, error-prone deployment and turned it into a simple push-button process. The real power here isn't just about deploying this one specific app. It's about embracing this whole mindset of automation. So I want you to think about your own workflow. What's that one tedious, manual task that you could turn into your next reliable recipe?